welcome to Meddkit's Provider Spotlight, where every week we are interviewing the most amazing private practices all across the United States. Every week we have someone new, someone in a different specialty, and most importantly, we have someone that's bringing a new perspective to us. We are here to learn, and today we have a really awesome special guest. I'm very excited to introduce you all to Marcelli Pascal-Rodriguez. He is the owner of Transformation Health Services in 4 great locations in Virginia, but also he's now in New York. So welcome, Marcelli. We're so excited to have you.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me. You're really good at that, by the way.
I hope that was such a great introduction. You're so awesome, Marcelli. We so much to get to, and I think it's really great to start off and just we want to get to know you. We want to hear like what got you here. Like, what is your story? What inspired you to open up your own practice?
So to be honest, my story, it kind of ranges from a lot of different places. Getting here has not been like the easiest thing. And I did not know that I would end up doing mental health, right? So it's something that I feel like was chosen for me, not something that I initially chose. So my first love was cardiac. Anything about the heart, I was on it. I was, I worked on a progressive telemetry unit, and that was my baby. I love cardiac, right? And then what I started realizing was that there was a real gap, especially for children and then underserved communities. So I was like, how can I help from another perspective? Because with cardiac, we're having so much loss, but what other organ in our body has just as equal importance, right? So I was like, the mind. Okay, so let's explore the mind some, right? So I
Yeah.
started doing that, and I got really involved in like chemically how things work from a trauma perspective, how things can change or shape. And then my love for mental health just really grew.
Mhm.
And then like we spoke about before, but in like 2019, I experienced a really big loss, right? I lost my mom actually to gun violence. And from there, I put everything into mental health because I wanted to figure out why people do the things that they do, and the responses and that type of thing. So I just went full fledged into mental health. My grief took me places that I couldn't even imagine going. And, rock bottom is really a real thing, right? So I experienced that. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to turn this grief and this pain into purpose. And so I opened a practice. We started out with just me in the practice as a solo practitioner. And now we have several locations. I have about 30 clinicians currently, and we're continuing to grow. So I know it's an earful, but it took a lot to get here, but here we are.
And thank you for sharing that, first
Yeah,
of all, Marcelli. It's a really difficult story,
yeah,
but it's also a story of triumph, of dedication to your family, and you've given people such great opportunities to work with you
yeah,
and to share what you've built with your community, and that is really important. And you've gone through it firsthand, and I'm sure that surely comes in handy when you are working with someone that, well, has experienced severe trauma and
yeah.
being able to really understand where they're coming from. I think sometimes often we feel, we might be talking with someone and we're like, I don't think they get what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, yeah. Seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so thank you for sharing that with us. And again, such a wonderful tribute to your family and to your community for doing what you're doing here and kind of expanding on that. I would love to hear about maybe what are some of the most common areas that you treat or find people are really struggling with today, which I'm sure there's a whole host of things. We're in 2026 and there's some problems more or less,
Yeah.
and things that are happening in the world. But maybe you can also share some uncommon things that you help your community with. I think there's always more that meets the eye, and then what we can help people with.
So I guess the biggest thing that we're treating would be, traditionally like anxiety-based disorders, depressive disorders. A lot of it has to do with what's going on in the world currently.
Mhm.
So anxiety has been at an all-time high. I would say it kind of trended upward since COVID, right? So we're seeing that more, but also trauma-based. somatic experiences, right? So people like right now we're working closely with like first responders, so like EMTs, firefighters, police officers, the people that or individuals that are serving our community that are witnessing trauma on a continuous basis and may not know how to kind of filter that out so it doesn't affect their lives as much, right? We can't help how it affects us, but we can help kind of how we deal with it so it doesn't affect us at a higher scale, right?
I love that. And I'm sure like a part of that and working with first responders is you're not only helping them cope with the trauma that they're experiencing, that they're seeing
Yeah,
through real life events that not many people have a front row seat to.
yeah,
And then, but I'm sure it also helps them in interacting with others. Like, how can I diffuse maybe a situation that is happening with help that I'm getting from your team? Because I can understand someone better and what's going on up here.
definitely, definitely. And so outside of like as far as the first responders and that community base, we also spend a lot of time in the community doing things with like underserved children. So we backpack drives, anything we can do as far as like mentorship, um, just really just getting out there and feeling more of the community base as much as possible because children, I know it sounds cliche, but they are the way of the future. So if we can help them not become broken adults, it's less work to do. So we try to help them with like coping skills and that type of thing, and in turn try to help the parents as well so we can raise healthy adults.
I love that. And I think, it's great that you're really helping the whole community, but also helping the whole family.
Yeah,
You're helping that child, but then helping that child interact with their family and their family interact with that child. So they
yeah,
just back to this toxic environment and you're able to help it so that everyone is feeling better and moving through life, hopefully a little bit easier, which I think is amazing. And so I love that that is your approach. It's very community based, but I would love to hear maybe how, other parts of your approach is different and what's kind of unique about you guys, aside from everything that you mentioned, which was obviously super unique. And you guys are doing a lot of amazing things for your community. But if maybe you can, pin spot for me, something that is really kind of unique to you all.
So, I pride my practice on being more holistic or human focused, right? So, in the sense of like when we do visits, we have to document diagnosis because that's what the insurance companies require, right? But for me, I try to let people know your diagnosis isn't your identity, right? So, we're huge on that. We look at the whole person, their mind, their body. What are they experiencing? What are their triggers? What trauma do they have? What history? How was it growing up, as a child?
Yeah.
All those things kind of shape everything. Before we even get into the chemical component, we have to see what is causing the response, right? So, my practice, we kind of pride ourselves in not going medication route first,
Yeah.
right? Because medication can be helpful, but it's just a tool. It's not something that should be the end all be all. And a lot of times it shouldn't be the beginning either, right?
Mm.
So, I would say that would be like the real difference with us. We try to get to the root of the problem before we start just pouring pills into people's lives.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was just thinking like, oh, you're really diving into the root cause. You're really trying to figure out
Yeah,
what it's not just let's manage the symptoms. Let's manage however you're feeling and try to just make you feel better about whatever is going on, but how you're reacting to whatever everyday life situation you're having
definitely.
is probably stemming from something that happened, whatever small or large trauma you had before, maybe when you were younger. And so let's work on that and heal on that. And then I'm sure that leads to better outcomes. But I
Yeah,
don't,
and
I'm not the therapist. I'm
well,
not
no,
a,
I mean that's a great way of explaining it. I mean, to be honest with you, a lot of people they'll say, "Well, I don't have any trauma. I can't think of anything,"
oh,
right? And so we see that a lot because a lot of times individuals that experience trauma, you can suppress it or repress it so much that you completely disassociate from what may have happened, right? So your body will keep the score even when your mind forgets, is what I tell people, right? So if, you know, I just find it very hard to believe when someone says I haven't experienced any trauma throughout my lifetime. I think we all have experienced something that shouldn't have happened or witnessed something that could have been better.
That's such a huge misconception.
That is a huge misconception.
That's crazy. I mean, not crazy that the person is experiencing it, but it's so interesting that the mind does that. The mind does such interesting things to protect us.
Yes.
And it's crazy how that manifests and how that allows us to, for better or worse, move through life because it's trying to protect us from the bad and scary things. But I like that you're slowly helping people uncover what that is so that they can actually really move through life more
Yeah.
comfortably. They're able to address maybe certain situations that they weren't able to even think about going into because of their anxiety or depression or just an overall nervousness because they've seen that movie before and they know how it ends. You know?
Correct. And what we don't deal with internally, we'll have to deal with externally. So that's why people will have racing heartbeat, shortness of breath, sweaty palms. Those are all like external manifestations for something that's happening internally.
And you know what? You kind of struck a light bulb with me in terms of misconceptions because I just love this topic in general.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting because I think every specialty is kind of plagued with, misconceptions or old wives' tales or,
Yeah.
you know, oh, my friend told me this about going to see this kind of a provider, and this is what the experience is probably going to be like. And then you have ChatGPT and you have
Mhm.
the internet now influencing people's decisions, and people are reading maybe some great and not great content online. So how do you
Yeah.
go about um, managing that, and how do you go about, what are some of the misconceptions that you see constantly about what maybe, I don't know if it's what people think about mental health or counseling, or just things that you hear all the time and you're like,
Yeah.
oh no.
So I actually wrote this down because I was like, I do not want to leave anything out, right?
Okay, we're not going to leave provider spotlight. We don't leave things out here.
So I
Okay.
put four, but there's so many more. But one of
Yeah.
the, I guess my top one that I chose, if you really wanted to stop, you would. So when it comes to addiction, right? So simply put, like addiction is not about willpower. The first time you do something, it may be a choice, but then thereafter, it's your body's way of survival because there's like substances, they alter dopamine. So dopamine is the feel good chemical that, when you use drugs, you get surges of, right? So initially, it may be something that you tried and now neurologically you're attached to, right? So I think that's the biggest thing for me. I think when it comes to like drug use, but think of it for everything, right? When it comes to social media, how we scroll all day. When it comes to binge eating, when we're eating our feelings. When it comes to gambling, like all of these things are addiction based. And for those individuals that experience it, they know that it's very hard to stop something because your body is even coffee. Let's talk about something as simple as that. A
Yeah.
lot of us can't start our day without having our first cup of coffee. And you may not view that as an addiction, but try to have a day without it and see how you feel.
Yeah,
Right?
I love that. I mean, it is I hear it all the time too. People don't
Yeah.
realize that drugs or these other things, alter brain chemistry, and that, it's not like if I loved you enough, like, or if you love me enough, you would quit X, Y,
Yeah.
and Z. It's just so much more nuanced than that. Um, and yeah, it's interesting to hear about the different types of addiction.
Yeah.
And then I think people classify in their mind like drug addiction is somehow so much like worse in a way or different than, like you said, like coffee addiction. You're like,
Yeah. I mean, caffeine can do things to our body that, drugs can do as well, especially when you go from having it all the time to withdrawing from it, right? So I think there's a lot of shame and guilt and what we push as a society on individuals that are suffering with addiction. And I just don't think it's fair. So, there is a chemical component there and it is survival based, so we just have to keep that in mind and have more empathy and compassion for that group of people,
Yeah,
right?
totally agree. All right, I know you got three more.
I
I
got three
I
more
want to
for
I
you.
want to hear the three. I'm
Look,
all
I'm not
ears.
stopping. I'm locked in now. At first, I started out a little shaky, but I got you now. So, another one, right? Another myth that just drives me crazy is when we talk about suicide, right? And so, I use the term suicide. I hate it. I hate the term unaliving yourself because I think it takes away from the actual complexity and seriousness of what suicide actually is, right? So people will say that if we talk about suicide, it puts ideas in the person's head.
Mm-hmm.
Research actually shows the exact opposite, right? So silence, I feel like, is what keeps people stuck and it makes them act on something that they're feeling, right? So have you realized like when we're around people and we pass them on a day-to-day basis, we may say something like, "Oh, how's your day going?" or "How are you?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, everyone will say good even when they're not good,
Yes.
right? And the person that says they're not good, a lot of times we don't even stop. We're like, oh, great, because we're so used to hearing good,
Yeah,
you know?
that's our natural response. How you doing? Bad. Oh, that's great. Like we're like,
Exactly.
wait a minute, that's not what I thought you were going to say. You should be saying great, even though you're not great.
Exactly. So a lot of times
Yeah.
if we can let people know, support your friends, like ask those questions, how are you doing? It's a good question, but there's better questions that can lead to more answers.
Mm.
Hey, I notice you're not doing this as much. I haven't seen you at the gym lately. Is everything okay? Like, what's going on? Or, hey, like, normally I hear from you at this time and you haven't reached out. I want to check in and make sure you're okay. Right. So, those are the things that are important. But we have to start talking about suicide because it's affecting kids at a really young age. It's affecting our military veterans. It's affecting everyone, like, especially like men, it's all of us. So we have to start talking about it more. And talking about it doesn't put it in someone's head. It actually does the opposite. It makes them more comfortable to talk to you about what they're really feeling.
Mm. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a really good misconception. And it's interesting because you use the term unalive, which I know has just kind of been like some recent phenomenon in like the
I
last
hate it. Yeah.
year or two. And I love that you're bringing this stuff up because, no one else has talked about this. And obviously this is something that is very recent over the past year or so, but it's something that we should be talking about and using, you know, proper terms for what things are and sharing the real stuff,
Yeah.
really going
It's
on.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. You
Awesome.
ready? You ready for the third one?
Number three.
Three, we
Lucky,
locked it
lucky
again.
three. I need the third misconception.
All right. So people will say that when you need medication that you're weak, right? So, we don't shame people that like individuals that have diabetes for taking insulin. We don't shame individuals that have hypertension for taking propanolol, metoprolol, whatever they may need, right? But when it comes to the mind itself, everyone always says like, "Oh, just nothing's really going on. Just pray about it. Prayer is good, yes, right? Or just go to the gym. Exercise is good, yes." But at the same time, there may be someone that has that chemical imbalance that is genetic, hereditary, whatever could have happened through life because as they were growing up, they had intense trauma that changed their neural pathways, right? So they may need medication to get them over the hump or through the bridge, or individuals that have issues with focus, they may need a medication to help with that. And
Absolutely.
that's okay. So if you need it to function, you're not weak. I would think weakness is, if we had to label it, not getting the help, right? So I push people to like, if you need something, go ahead and ask for it. If it isn't medication, still try to get the help that you need. And it's not a weakness. I think that's like your superpower, knowing what you need and going to get it.
Yeah. Well, you know what has been so cool throughout, this portion of this segment and talking
Yeah.
about misconceptions is that you equate it to something else in life that I think people take maybe less seriously. It might could be a word or a
Yeah.
phrase for it.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, and then but you it's the same thing, between addiction or people taking certain medications and how you feel about that.
Yeah.
Um, there is, I feel like in a lot of this, there is so much shame where there shouldn't be. Kind of what you were saying, that there's a lot of shame revolving around all of these things that if we actually just spent time talking about it and realizing that even though it could be a different circumstance, it's more or less the same
Yeah.
aspect. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say like, shame and stigma, those are the two words that
Yeah.
keep individuals stuck. So if you gave it three S's, it would be shame, stigma, stuck, right?
Yep.
Um, so it's just something that we as people, we just have to do better. Everyone has their own struggles. Just because I'm on the side of being provider, all
Mhm.
of my staff, we all have our own struggles, right? What makes us great is that we're able to openly talk about them, you
Absolutely.
know? And there's never a time like if anyone is going through something, it's something where we just kind of, today's not a good day and here's why, you
Mhm.
know? And I think it's important. It's important to do that, but that leads me to like misconception number four, right?
I'm
So,
ready.
so therapy. So people, I guess, we picture therapy a lot of times as coming in, sitting or laying on a couch, and then someone sitting there and saying, like, oh, how are you feeling today? And waiting for a response.
Yes.
Right. So I think that's what a lot of times we see on TV, but that truly is not what therapy is. Right.
Hmm.
So there's so many different types of therapy. There's trauma processing, there's solution based, there's skilled based, there's body centered when we talk about somatic healing. Um, there's so many different modalities, CBT, DBT, depending on whatever you're experiencing, right? So with therapy not being one size fits all, I always tell my clients, you are the driver of the car. The therapist should be your GPS to help you get to your destination, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times people don't go to therapy like, oh, I don't need therapy. Therapy is something that is proactive. You may not require it all the time, but you should always check in because it's good to hear another person's like input that's not yours, that's not family, that's unbiased, and can give you a clearer view of what's happening.
Ab-
Right.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we all need that in life. I mean, that's, why we talk to friends, but they don't have, most oftentimes, your friend is not a counselor or a therapist or a doctor, and they can be a little bit limited in terms of how they can get you to achieve maybe your where you want to be actually. And it's not just giving into, oh, you're right, and maybe you're wrong.
Yeah.
And and challenging that person in the way that they need to be challenged so that they can grow and heal in the way that they actually need to.
Yeah.
Um, so, I think in all of this, you've given us misconceptions, but you've given us such great tools to think about and
Yeah.
how we're approaching other people, how we're thinking about ourselves, how we're thinking about our philosophy on good or bad.
Yeah.
And those are real treats. And you're talking about the hard stuff. This is not like, an easy thing to say, or maybe what people might traditionally say to evoke a response.
Yeah.
This is what I'm supposed to say. This is real. This is the real things. And so I'd love to learn from you because you've given us so much to think about already. To kind of round out today, I love Marcelli pro tips. I think you've given us already so much to think about, but I think
Yeah.
I think we could really use some pro tips in terms of, how can we move like our mental health in a better trajectory today? Like what are maybe some common or easy tips that you might give a client, for people that are coming in to see you? And then, you know, you've built an amazing business, Marcelli.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, you have, and you've turned, you have a hard and but beautiful story and triumphant story. And so I'd love maybe you could share a pro tip for a business owner, whether they're new and they're starting out, maybe as like you were, a few years ago, or maybe someone that's had their business for 25 years. And I think everyone here has something to learn, whether you're a to-be client or you've been running a business, and both can be hard.
Yeah.
So, so I'd love to hear from you and what your pro tips are.
So I broke this down based on like client based or, and then also for the entrepreneurs or business owners, right? So, but this can apply to both actually. So the first thing that I would say is breathe intentionally, right? I know that sounds crazy because we all breathe every day, but very few people breathe on purpose. So when I say that, like when things are feeling elevated, to take some time, separate yourself from everything that's happening and really focus on your breath because that can reset your whole nervous system,
Mhm.
right? So before I make any decisions in my life, I'll meditate, I'll breathe on it. If I'm having a long day where I've seen a lot of clients that have, let's just say intense trauma or there's something that's happening, I'll take some time to myself to go ahead and breathe. And that can change the whole day for me, right? So, with me doing like somatic healing, I've realized how much breathing is important. So, for individuals that have issues with meditation, get some blindfolds or like a face mask of some kind. Lock yourself in a room by yourself, and just breathe. Put
Mhm.
on some like calming music, and that can help. It helps with cortisol release. It helps with dopamine. And even to the clients that are taking medications, before you take that Clonopin or that Ativan, whatever that is, just focus on your breath, right? So
Yeah.
the second thing that I would say, not to cut you off, boundaries, right?
Ooh.
So if more of us practice healthy boundaries, then I feel like a lot of times they wouldn't have to come to me, right? I love people coming to me, but um, boundaries to me, it's self-respect, right? So you think of it, let's just make it like common terms.
Sure.
You go to like a nightclub or whatever, and you see a bouncer at the door, right? And if you don't have the correct shoes, the correct clothing, they say, you know what, you can't get in.
Mm-hmm.
We understand that, so we show up differently to get into this nightclub, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. Like I tell individuals, be the bouncer to your life. Not everyone needs to have access to you, right? And the same level of access. It's okay to, have acquaintances that we don't consider friends.
I really like that. And it's so much, and it's fun too. Like I'm bouncer Rachel, like you are not invited to this club today. Um,
Yeah.
do not enter. You know, your access has been revoked.
Access denied.
Access denied.
And it's okay because how many times have we said no, I mean yes to something that we really wanted to say no to?
Yes. Oh my gosh, people pleasers, are you listening to this? I mean,
Yes. I'm a reformed people pleaser. you know, but you have to have the self-respect and understanding that, you know, it's okay to say no.
yeah.
It's okay to just not agree to everything. And sometimes you have to do what's best for you, and that's okay. So the third thing that I would say is you have to separate who you are from what you're feeling, right?
Mhm.
So, some people are like, what do you mean by that? So you may feel sad, but you're not sadness, right? So you may feel like, oh, I'm overwhelmed, but you're not a failure for feeling overwhelmed, right? So if we can put a word to the feelings that we're experiencing, then we don't associate our identity with an emotion that will soon pass.
Hmm. That's so wise. Oh my gosh, I never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there are times where I think everyone has done that in their life and just kind of assumed this role, this feeling, and slapped on the label and said that's what we are, in that moment. And so that's really cool to hear. I love these pro tips. it's things that you can just take with you. Like you don't need to pay money to breathe.
No,
You know,
it's free. There's so much air.
and so much air. It's like I can't believe I have a lifetime supply. It's crazy.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's sad. It's, I think we're so used to, and with everything that's happening in social media, you need to buy this. You need to do this. This is the latest and greatest. And I think we just need to peel it back to basics. And
Yeah.
I love that.
And and it's crazy because they have devices on social media that people will purchase on TikTok to help them breathe.
Stop it.
And it's free.
No.
You know what I mean? Like individuals that do like sports and things like that, they buy devices to help them do what? Better breathe. And that helps with their endurance.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with us. Like to help with our mental endurance, we just need to breathe.
I
Yeah.
love it so much. Marcel, and so eye-opening, so
Yeah.
amazing to chat with you today. And before we leave off, I want to make sure you get a chance to just share with folks that are listening where they can reach out, where they could get more resources from you and learn more. That would be awesome if you don't mind
So,
sharing.
of course, I do have one thing. I didn't mention my veteran
Tell
entrepreneurs
me.
that
Yeah.
have businesses. I have to. So for anyone that has a business, right? We all know that it's not easy. The economy has not been great to a lot of business owners, right? So to those individuals who have had to close their business, I pray that they get another opportunity to open something else, and it's greater than even the last one was, right? But to those individuals that are like still trying to push through during these
Yeah.
times, I say stay grounded in your vision, right? Find your tribe. You know, um, hyper independence actually is a trauma response. So you can't do everything by yourself. So that's why I say it's important to find your tribe, right? And the biggest thing is if that is your purpose and what you're meant to do, purpose is going to sustain you even when the numbers fluctuate, right? So continue to show up, to be present, and things are going to get better. For those who are starting a business, it's the same type of thing, right? Um, I always tell people don't get into business if it's just for profitability
Yep. Hmm.
because you will burn out so quick that it's ridiculous, right? Money will come eventually, right? Like if you're doing something you love and people can tell when it's not real.
Yeah. They sure can. They can.
Yeah.
We can read through it.
Yeah.
People are smart, and I think it's really sage advice, to the business owners that are out there. Um, Building something is not easy.
Yeah.
You really got to have the passion for it. This is not for a faint of the heart. So
Yeah.
I agree. You're just starting. Keep going. If you're listening and you've been in business for many, many years, maybe also think about breathing.
That part.
I'm sure you got to breathe because there's
Telling you.
every day is new and complications arise. And so I think all the pro tips that you've given really to all of us, we can, whether you're clinical, non-clinical, can really take this to heart and take it
Yeah.
home and do something with it today. So,
Definitely.
so
Yeah.
amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you. So, back to what you were saying, where can you find me? And side
Yeah.
note, so I started this business with a $30,000 SBA loan, right?
Oh my God.
And no degree in business, had no idea what exactly needed to be done. Um, but like I said, it grew from me until now, like where it is currently, right? So you don't need all the titles to have a business. You just have to have the passion and the purpose, right? But where you can find us. So transformationhealthservices.com. We're also on Instagram under Transformation Health Services and Facebook. We are going to be opening, or soon, I guess, we're going to be doing a podcast. So I think it's funny.
All
So
right.
yeah, it's called Unprescribed, so that will be available on all platforms, right? And it's no filter, no cosign. We're going to be talking about some of the same things that we've been talking about right now.
Awesome.
So if they want to tune into that, that will be coming next month. So we're actually working on that currently.
That's amazing. So this was like a little prequel
And
to,
I'm telling you, it's very stressful because being a mental health provider, I did my breathing exercises, but then when it said you are now recording, I was like, oh no, like what do I do now?
Well, like everyone else, you are fantastic. And
Oh, thank you.
well, and I certainly, along with everyone that's listening, really enjoyed hearing your story, hearing what you have been able to bring to the table to Virginia and New York.
Yeah.
And we're very excited for what's to come. And so we would be delighted to have you again and hopefully soon. But thank you so much, Marcelli, for joining us today.
Thank you. I appreciate you.